So before we start this video, it's really windy outside. So if you hear any wind or weird banging noises, it's like the windiest it's been in Ohio in a long time. So I apologize. But getting straight into it. The Godox UL60 is a daylight balanced 60-watt LED light from their UL series of lights. While it shares the same features as the UL150, it is in a similar class of the SL60W, and it improves in some of the biggest drawbacks of the SL60W. Let's go over the details of the UL60 and do some softbox tests, compare it to the SL60W, and then I'll let you know what I think about it at the end. Godox reached out directly to me and asked if I wanted to review their UL60 and their 70cm softbox. After purchasing the SL60W and using it for years and enjoying the SZ150R, I said I would be interested in reviewing the UL60. Another camera shop, Per Gear, reached out to me and asked if I wanted to review their C-stand and a 120cm Godox softbox as well. These worked out perfectly, and at the end of the video, we're going to compare the differences between a 70cm softbox and a 120cm softbox with the UL60. If you're interested in my method and ethics of reviewing products, check out the link below. The UL60 is part of Godox's line of silent LED video lights. These lights were designed to be used in a sound recording environment like interviews, streaming, or talking head videos like these YouTube videos. Fan noises can often ruin your clean audio, and this is a common culprit of that low hum on audio when the fans are too close to a microphone. If you're working in a small space, it becomes even more difficult to keep your lights away from your microphone. And this is where silent video lights really come in helpful. When it comes to price, the UL60 retails for $299 USD. The more powerful Godox UL150 retails for $439. Another Godox RGB light that can silence its fan under certain conditions is the SZ150R, which retails for $559. For more information on that light, check out my SZ150R video. A light that I've really enjoyed using from Godox is the SL60W, and this retails for $135, and it is a great bang for your buck light. I still use it from time to time, and I love it so much, I actually bought a second one to add to my kit. I'll be comparing these two lights in detail later in the video, so be sure to stick around for that. I was really interested in seeing how these lights compared to each other. The UL series of lights has a fanless design that is 100% silent while you're using it, even at full power. The light color can't be changed, and it's set to 5600 Kelvin, which makes this a daylight balanced light, but it is able to be dimmed from 1 to 100% in increments of 1. This light is advertised to have a CRI of 96 and a TLCI of 97, and an output level of 31,000 lumens at 1 meter. I don't have any tools that are capable of testing this or confirming this, but generally speaking, a CRI or a TLCI rating over 90 is considered excellent. The design of the UL series of lights is functional as well as a big improvement coming from the SL series of lights. The aluminum housing with the mesh top grates are more modern looking, as well as making it more durable and removing the need for a fan. This updated design is what makes it possible to remove the fan from the light and get that silent operation. The top and bottom of the light have open holes, so airflow can travel through and keep the light cool and silent. Since this is so open though, I wouldn't recommend using this in a dirty or dusty environment. Sometimes the locations we film in are dusty warehouses or garages, and due to the design of this light, it would allow dust and dirt to get into your light. I haven't had an issue with any dust or debris getting into this light, and I haven't used it in many dirty locations, but I would think that if you're using this in a really dusty, dirty location, that some particles could get in there and it could maybe negatively affect the airflow. But speaking of overheating, since this is a fanless open design, overheating was something that I was kind of concerned about. I haven't been able to overheat this light. We haven't had really hot weather in Ohio, but I have had this light in my office powered on for a few hours at 100%. And it's never turned off or overheated on me. The hottest temperatures we've had this year are like the low 80s so far, so I haven't used this in the 90s or upper 90s where it gets really hot. but the design of the UL60 seems to do pretty well with heat dispersion. I'll do some more tests in the Ohio weather as it picks up in summer, and again, I will update the pinned comment below if I can get this light to overheat. The yoke on the light has this large knob on the side, which makes it easy to adjust the pitch of the light. The front has a Bowens mount on it, so you can use all of your Bowens mount softboxes or reflectors with this light. I tested my tiny UL60 in a giant 4-foot round softbox, and the yoke was able to hold up the softbox no problem. Adjusting the softbox was tough since this light is so small, but I still was able to do it. The UL60 itself doesn't have any controls on it. You have to control everything from the control box that is separate from the light. From the control box, you can adjust the brightness of the light, select up to 8 built-in presets, and is DMX compatible. You can power the control box from wall power or a V-mount battery, and the box has a chain that you can hang this from your light stands. The power cables on the UL60 are thicker gauged and more premium feeling than previous lights from Godox, like the SL series. Both cables from the light and the control box are long enough to be used in the same room without needing an extension cord in my uses. And the addition of these Velcro cable ties make your cable management really tidy. Overall, I like the control box design other than previous designs because you don't have to drop this light down to turn it on, off, or adjust your settings. Dropping a light is really annoying, especially when you want to leave it up for a while and you don't want to change your lighting position, but you have to turn the light on or off, or you just want to adjust it a few percent. This, you don't have to drop the light down. You can adjust everything with the control box easily from wherever you are. Another thing that would have been nice to have is a case. The UL60 does not come with a soft-sided case like their other higher-end lights do. I understand this is probably to keep the cost down, but I would really love if they would include a case with lights like this. This makes everything easier to store and move from location to location without risking damage. The box it comes in is paper and styrofoam, so you won't be able to use it as a reliable long-term storage solution. The UL60 does not come with a remote in the box, but if you're not a fan of app controls, you can pick up a remote for about $10. Before we jump into the tests and comparisons, I've been digging into my analytics lately, and less than 4% of viewers are subscribed to my channel. If you're enjoying this content, subscribe to find your way back in the future. And if you're one of that less than 4%, welcome back to my channel and thank you for subscribing. Something I was curious about was how a 70 centimeter softbox versus a 120 centimeter softbox will look with a 60 watt light. For my US friends, 70 centimeters is a little over 2 feet, while 120 centimeters is almost 4 feet. So that's a pretty big difference here. I've used both these softboxes together in a recent video I made, and I was pretty happy with the results. The 120 centimeter softbox fills up huge amounts of space with light, almost lifting the entire room level if you're not using a grid in a smaller room. The light is a little overkill for small shots, but I wanted to get the product bright and not have any overhead lights on at all. So a giant softbox was able to throw enough light on me and kick up the entire level of the kitchen. Even though the light was being used at 60% and being double diffused with a giant softbox, the UL60 was able to throw off enough light for the shot. One thing to note here, I wasn't using the grid. If I was using a grid, I would have to crank the light even higher, but I had a little more headroom as I was sitting at about 60%. I used the 70 centimeter softbox with a grid, and I used that with my SZ150R at about 15% to fill in some of the shadows that the UL60 created. Since the larger softbox was so close, I didn't have many shadows to fill in, but the softbox with the grid did allow me to direct light to fill in where those shadows were. The Godox softboxes don't come with a grid though, so if you want to use it, you'll have to buy it separately. As far as support, I used the Lofa C stand, then it came in really handy with the 120 centimeter softbox. I wasn't sure if the UL60 was going to be able to hold a 4-foot softbox since it's so small, but it held up great, and I even left this in my kitchen for a couple days after the shoot to see if it would sag over time, and I'm really happy to report that it held up without any sagging for those entire days. For the 120 centimeter softbox, a C stand or a really heavy light stand is the only way I would suggest using this since it's so front heavy. Especially if you're outside, this thing would be a wind sail. The The 70cm softbox could probably get away with a less beefy stand, but I like using stands and sandbags for longer shoots just to be safe. C-stands are one of those things you'll have forever, and in the scheme of things, this one is actually pretty affordable. It's on Amazon right now for about $100. It's a lighter weight than a heavy-duty Matthews stand, but it costs almost half of what those stands cost. So if you're in the market for a C-stand, I would recommend checking these out. They also have stainless steel light stands for about $42. So if you're thinking about using a larger light setup, make sure you have some beefy stands to go along with them. Using these softboxes with that Vitamix shoot was great, but I was curious how they actually compared to one another with more controlled settings. To do some tests, I used these softboxes on the C stand and set up my living room and put these modifiers on the UL60 while my lovely fiance was reading a magazine. Starting off, we have the 70cm softbox with the grid attached. The grid allows us to keep the spill from hitting the background and direct our light more to our subject. The size of the softbox is great for one subject or small to medium sized products. The grid does not come with a softbox, so that's one thing you'll have to keep in mind, as you will have to purchase that separately. In the next test, we have the 70cm softbox with no grid. And as we increase the light, we can tell that our light is spilling onto the background here, and the overall light is more intense as well. If you're trying to get the most output out of your lights, make sure to use them without a grid for maximum light. The next test is our 120cm softbox without a grid. This softbox is throwing light everywhere. The entire scene is getting light thrown on it, and we are not able to control it as much without flagging the light or using a grid. However, since the softbox is larger, the light is softer and less intense overall, since the light is covering more area and wrapping around Ashley a little more here. There are fewer shadows, and the overall level of our scene is just brought up. Looking at the 70cm softbox with and without the grid, we can see exactly how much more light is being thrown around without the grid. The grid is doing a great job at directing that soft light towards the subject, but the light is much dimmer than the regular softbox. Both of these are double diffused, so the light is nice and soft, but the no grid has more light that wraps around the subject and has fewer shadows. Comparing the 70 to the 120cm softbox, we can see just how much more light the 120 is spreading around. The light is in the exact same place, but the 70 is directing more light in a smaller area on the subject, even without a grid. If you have one subject, the 70 is probably easier to work with, but if you have multiple subjects, it's going to be very difficult to use that 70, and the 120 would be great for lighting about 2 or 3 people more evenly. The 120 is doing a better job at eliminating the shadow behind Ashley on the couch as well. One softbox isn't better than the other, it just depends on how you're going to be using them for. For what it's worth, my fiance loved the 4-foot softbox because it wrapped more light around her and she didn't have as many shadows. I personally love a darker and more contrasted look, so this can come down to personal preference and what your shoot calls for. Moving on to comparing the UL60 to the SL60W. This isn't exactly a fair fight, as the UL60 costs $300 and the SL60 costs $135. You can get 2 SL60Ws for a little less than the price of one UL60W, but the newer features of the UL60W can make it really worth that increased price. Going over the differences of these lights in terms of output, this comparison is interesting since the SL60W can't output anything under 10%. The UL60 is nice because we can adjust the light from 0 to 100 in increments of 1 throughout the entire range. Putting these lights side by side, the SL60W looks slightly warmer, but I have used the SL60W for years, and this could be the result of those colors shifting over time. I think the UL60 looks better here, but we're comparing the light quality to a well-used light to a relatively new light. For the light output, these lights are about 1 meter away from the wall and are similar. Again, the UL60 is pulling slightly ahead here, but in real-world applications, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference between the light output unless they were side by side. This could also be another sign of the SL60W's age though. The UL60 is more expensive, but it has 0 fan noise, made of aluminum, can be used with the Godox Light app, has longer, more premium cables, effects, and you're able to use the control box without dropping it down to adjust your settings. It also has the ability to be used with a V-mount battery. The UL60 doesn't come with a physical remote. However, if you really want one, you can purchase one for an additional $10. The SL60W is less expensive, has an audible fan noise if you put it too close to your microphone. It can't be used with any apps. It has cheaper, shorter cables. There are no effects, and you have to drop the light down if you want to adjust the settings on it. It does, however, come with a remote. So if you want a more affordable light, as long as you know its limitations, it can be good. I used one for years knowing its limitations and was able to get pretty good results, but sometimes my audio required a little noise reduction in Audition to remove some of those noises if my microphone got too close to my light. It seems like all of the drawbacks of the SL series line have been addressed and fixed in the newer UL series line. The only thing the SL series has is price. The SL line is less expensive, but you're also getting cheaper parts and fewer features as well. I love that the UL60 is built to last with more durable materials, and it has improvements in the right places. I think these UL lights would be worth their price tag based on the materials, the app, and the lack of fan noise. If you're thinking about picking up a UL60 but concerned it only has 60 watts of output, check out the UL150. It has the same features, but it has an additional 90 watts of power for $140 more. That being said, if you only have $135 and you don't mind the plastic housing and you have a large enough space to get your microphone away from your light, the SL60W is a great bang for your buck light. And you can spend more money on a stand and modifiers and sandbags that you'll need from having a larger light setup. If you're picking up two SL60Ws, you'll have to be very mindful of your mic placement with these two lights, as having an audible fan noise is going to only compound the problem the more lights you introduce. So what do you think of the UL60? Will you be picking one up? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, share it with a friend and check out my video about the Godox SZ150R. Or check out this video that the YouTube Googlebot thinks you'll like. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.